as homeschooling moms, we all go through slumps, seasons of low energy, not really feeling it, or maybe your kids are giving you a lot of pushback and you're just kind of like, why am I doing this again? The heart and passion has kind of been drained out of your homeschool, maybe just drained out of you for wanting to homeschool. You need a little injection. You need a little injection of heart and inspiration back into your homeschool. All been there, myself included. Today, I want to share with you 10 ways that you can bring that quick little injection of heart and inspiration back into your homeschool so that you can continue on a journey that is both beautiful but very, very difficult at times. Number one, and probably my very favorite, is to bring some humor. If you feel like life is kind of humdrum, things are getting very boring, find a way to inject some humor. This works basically for every life circumstance. Bring some fun in, okay? Bring some funny in. I shouldn't say fun. That's a kind of different thing. Funny is different, right? We all know that like a well-timed joke can just totally lighten the mood. So maybe you're like, but I'm not like naturally funny or whatever. That's okay. Try to inject a little bit of humor. Let your kids have a little bit of fun. Make some jokes. Everything doesn't have to be so serious. And sometimes I think we just overlook that in our desire for everything to look a certain way or feel a certain way. We lose sight of, the fun that can be found, and also just the like lightheartedness it brings to things, to inject a little bit of humor into them. Number two is to double check and make sure that your rhythms and routines that you have going in your home are working for both you and your children. Now, I talk a lot about rhythms and routines, why they're important. I have workshops all about building like homemaking routines and things like that. I honestly believe they are sort of the lifeblood of a good functioning home and homeschool, is to have some really good rhythms and routines in place so that everybody knows what to expect. We're not waking up every day like flailing, figuring out what we're gonna do. We're not sort of at the whim of the day. And for children, this is especially important. They really need that. So just double check and make sure that those things are functioning well for you. And then I would kind of add to, once you've got them and you know that they're good and they're working, if you're like, yeah, but there's just not any heart in it. I talk about like adding, romanticizing your home and adding things that are just beautiful for the sake of being beautiful into your home and into your life. It's the same thing within our homes and our homeschools, finding ways that you can add a little bit of beauty and perhaps what some would call like unnecessary beauty to your day. Instead of putting your tea in a just regular old coffee mug, maybe take out your china, your teacups, and put your tea in a beautiful teacup on a plate and drink your tea like that. Maybe you do that all the time anyways. But if there are little ways that we can add a little bit of that whimsy, that romance, if you will, I don't mean like love romance. I mean like looking at the world around us with a sense of like wonder and awe and beauty in the mundane. We have gotten to a point where we want to minimize everything and streamline everything. And it's given us gray, ugly buildings, homes that feel like insane asylums, and wardrobes that are just like two colors. And I get it, right? For some people, that's what they want. But I think we have to inject some beauty. Think about like old world architecture and stuff like that. For a long time, we made beautiful things for the sake of them being in existence. That's it. They did nothing but just be beautiful for the sake of being beautiful. And so I would just remind you that it's not wrong to want to add some of those moments to your day. And it's not hard to just start injecting those little things here and there. And I bet you will find that they bring a little smile to your face. Everything doesn't have to be Instagram and Pinterest worthy, but I promise you, sort of setting the tone and setting the mood in your house in that way will make a difference in how you feel. Now that kind of brings me to number three, which is to slow down so that you can have that margin for the magic, as I always say. If you are like jam-packed every 5 minutes, every 30 minutes of your day is scheduled and planned and time to go here, time to do this, time to do that, you lose the ability for any kind of spontaneity to pop into your life. And as I like to say, there really is a lot of magic in that mundane. Sometimes when we slow down enough to allow ourselves to be bored, to allow our kids to be bored, to just stop and not have every moment of our life predetermined, pre-planned, and we start to look around us, not on our phones, not into the computer screen, maybe not even into a book, just in the world around us that is currently existing around us in nature, in our own homes. I mean, sometimes as we go through these years of motherhood, I bet in the early years, you spend a lot of time just sitting on the sofa watching your baby play. And you just were enamored by them. You just sat in awe of them and watched every little thing that they did. Like look at the way their hand moves. Look at the way they suck on their bottom lip or scratch their ear. And you just sat in awe and appreciation of this being that you love so much you can't stand it. And I think as we go through motherhood and our kids get older, our lives get busier and fuller, we lose a lot of sense of awe and wonder for our families, for our children. And if we can slow everything down so that we can leave some margin to try to have some of those moments again. But our brains are so full that it's hard, honestly, to find them. And this is the kind of thing that is not going to happen to you by accident, unfortunately. You have to be intentional about carving out the space for it to happen. And in the beginning, you might feel kind of dumb. You're like, oh, we just live in a society that's like, go, 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 do, do, do. Slowing down enough to allow something like this, for the first little bit, it may be like, okay, nothing's happening. This feels dumb. I should be doing something else. But just give it time. Give it a little bit of time. And I think you'll be surprised at the little moments, the little things that you start to see that perhaps you've become blind to because it's just become so much a part of your everyday and you're too busy thinking about this or that. And by the way, friend, just know that when I'm saying these things, I'm not saying them in a coming from a place of judgment towards you in any way. This is all like based on my experiences, based on the things that I've noticed about myself. I don't share things with you from a place I haven't been. I try to do before I tell you to do. And I try to share with you the lessons that I've learned in homeschooling for as many years as I have, and going through all the ups and downs of wanting to quit and feeling overwhelmed by it and questioning myself and my decisions, and sometimes just being bored and over it. I don't want to do it anymore. Just send the kids to school. I've got other things I want to do. I feel all of those same things. So these are just some of my encouragements to you that come from my own experience. So then that would bring us to number 4, which is to ensure that you really understand your child and their learning style. Mass instruction and the way education has been carved out over the years, it almost just completely makes us blind to this, to being able to see that, oh gee, how the curriculum is written, how the lesson is taught, might not actually be how my child, or this one of my child, is actually capable of learning, retaining the information. My sister and I had this long talk yesterday about passion for learning that children have innately and how it gets snuffed out. And how if you're just patient, it's so hard to be though. And we both know this because we both have older kids and younger kids, and we've seen kind of the gamut. But like, if you can just be patient and not feel the need to push your child into formal education, they are going to come to you and ask, I want to learn this. I want to know this. Help me do this. Help me learn to read. But we have all these expectations where we've now got to come up with curriculums that, like, how can your child learn to do this without crying? Because so many kids are crying, learning to write or read or whatever. And we have to come up with a curriculum where if we're patient and we wait, there's likely no tears involved because they are doing it out of an eagerness, and kids are sponges. And when they want to know, they're ready, right? So my point in saying all of that is to say, understand your child's learning style, understand the way that they learn best, and how can you help facilitate that for them, and make sure that you understand that one of your children may have a different learning style from another. It's very hard, the more children you have, to give everybody a completely like bespoke homeschool education where you're just like, okay, little Johnny's doing this and Debbie's doing this, and everyone's off and doing something totally different. The more kids you have, the more you do need to kind of cram people together into subjects or things like that. But I still believe that if overall we can make sure that the basics, like I said, the reading, the writing, the math, if we can make sure that those are taught to the children in the ways in which they will retain them and learn them and be able to do them best, you're going to have so much less friction when it comes to teaching them, for getting them through these subjects. And once this is like the beautiful part, right, about homeschooling is that, or just children learning in general, right? Take homeschooling out of it. Once a child has like kind of mastered those, once they proficient readers, they can write well, and they can, what did I say, reading? And they can do basic math, right? They can do the basics of math. It just kind of opens up everything to them. And then you really step into your like facilitator role for them. So it's a beautiful thing that you can inject into your homeschool and make your days feel better by knowing where to push and where to back off. Number 5 is to do your very best to stay focused, to be present when you're meant to be present and focused when you're meant to be focused. And what I mean by that is putting away our phones when we're sitting down to do a read aloud with our kids, or if our kid is going to read to us. I'm here to tell you, our children notice how much time we spend on our phones. If we make it this thing that we are just like always on all the time, it makes them sort of covet it even more. They want it even more. They think they need one. They see it as, you remember when we were younger and we were like, oh, when I'm an adult and I drive. We see the things adults do and we pair them mentally like, adults do this. Well, do we want our kids pairing adults spend all day on their phones? Because then as soon as they get their phone, that's what they do, right? That's kind of an aside. The point of this is that when we are picking up our phones in the middle of our children reading to us or telling us a story, or we're supposed to be helping them with something, but we're checking our phone, we're also responding to text messages or on our computer, the kids notice. They notice and they internalize, whether they realize it or not, or you realize it or not. It's often like, okay, well, this is more important than me. And you miss a lot of key things about your children. You will miss if you are on your phone instead of paying attention when you're in the moments, right? So to me, this is where like making those delineations, like, okay, this is my non-phone time. This is my specific time to do this with my child. At least for me, that is what works best. I'm not great at multitasking. Most people are not. And especially when it comes to multitasking things that matter, I think is a bad idea just in general, right? We need to focus and be present when we say we're going to be, when we're meant to be. And I really believe that you will catch more about, when parents are like, well, I'm not really sure about my child's learning style, or they're, where they're missing the mark here. This isn't clicking for them and I don't really know why. I think a lot of times it's a lack of our ability to focus. We especially end up paying attention or thinking about other things that are stressing us out. So the best that we can to compartmentalize and like stuff all that away. For this moment, I'm focusing on you, child, listening to you, helping you, reading to you, listening to you read to me, whatever it is. And make sure that you're being realistic, okay? You can't probably give an hour of completely undivided attention to just one child. But even if it's a 5-minute increment, work up to it and do your best to keep your phone out of the picture so that you can stay focused and give that very focused attention when and where it is needed. These are all little things that are just going to change your overall feeling towards homeschooling, your kids' feelings towards homeschooling. These are just little ways that we can kind of shift perspective and, like I said, bring a little bit of that heart back into our homeschool. That kind of brings me to number 6, which is make sure that you are not losing sight of your child's perspective on these things. I've said this so many times, sometimes I feel like I'm just, beating this drum over and over again, but kids don't care about what we care about. We can make them care about obeying us, but we can't make them care about the things that we care about, right? That's how human beings are, right? So are we keeping our child's perspective in mind? I'm not saying your child calls the shots, make the rules. I'm not that kind of parent, okay? You do you. I'm not that kind of parent. My rules still are set and they trump all, right? But also ensure that I'm not making unfair and arbitrary rules for things just because I'm the mom and I can. And so I think that I attempt to keep my children's perspective in mind when it comes to things that I'm asking them to do homeschooling things, especially when it comes to education, I try hard not to say, well, because you just have to learn this. And maybe to a fault, will explain to my children sometimes why it's necessary to learn somewhat unnecessary things, explaining to them kind of the long arc of education. And unfortunately, you have to know this to be able to do this. You don't really need this now. You need this way, way later, but they make you learn it now so that you can do this. It's just sort of like a very realistic picture. And I believe children appreciate that. I believe that when we constantly, for lack of a better term, lie to them about what's important and why they need to know things and stuff, they start to sense that we are not being honest, especially when they come in contact at some point with the fact that, oh, I don't actually need to know that for every day. Then they just start to distrust the other things, right? It's sort of this like, well, these adults are just lying. I don't need to know this. This doesn't matter. I think it's important to not only keep their perspective in mind, but help them keep their education in perspective, okay? Whether, as some kids, especially who deal with anxiety, they get very wrapped up in everything being perfect and all A's and 100% on every test, and it can rock their world. Like their idea of who they are as a person gets rocked if their grades slip a little bit or something like that. So a lot of kids are very tightly wound and closely tied to their academic performance. So I think keeping their perspective on the things that we're asking them to do, make sure that we're being fair, like this matters to us, but doesn't matter to them. And so if the answer is yes, it matters to me, no, it doesn't matter to them, is there a way to meet in the middle on expectations? But then also helping them to keep the perspective of education as a whole, its intended purpose, how they can get through the things that they need to get through that are not really interesting to them, to allow them the time and freedom to learn the things that they're really interested in, the things they're passionate about, etc. I could, again, go off on a whole tangent about all of this, but yeah, perspective of both our children and education is important. Number 7 is to take care of yourself and make sure that you are carving out time for things that interest you, whether that be hobbies or just general like caring for yourself. I always get so sad when I hear moms say that, well, I can't even shower, or I would love to do X, but I can't. If that is how like wild and crazy and just out of control our days are, that we can't go to the bathroom, we can't clean ourselves, I think we've obviously got some issues that need to be dealt with. So make sure that you are taking care of yourself physically, but mentally as well, and allowing time for your interests. There's always a season in life of sort of self-sacrifice, and sometimes that pendulum swings really hard on the self-sacrifice side. Sometimes you do go through phases where you are like, I'm lucky I brushed my teeth today, okay? I had newborn twins at one point along with 5 other children. So I completely understand when you get to that point where you feel like, whoa, this self-sacrifice pendulum has swung way hard this way. But there must be a yin and a yang. We must bring back to center. There must be sort of a symbiotic relationship where, yeah, self-care goes out the window for a very short time, and then probably when you're younger or when your kids are older, it swings really hard this way where you get to just think about yourself for a long time. But most of the time, we should live in that middle place where we're taking care of ourselves, not at the sacrifice of others, but also we're not sacrificing ourselves constantly, completely, right? So within being a homeschooling mom, especially because you're not just responsible for taking care of your home and, keeping that all tidy and food and feeding people, you're also responsible for the education of your children, which feels often like a very big burden to bear, a very heavy burden to bear. And so you've got to make sure you're caring for yourself, whether that be giving yourself time, like I said, for things that you're interested in, but also time to like physically care for yourself so that you can feel good. These things are important. And sometimes we lose sight of their importance because people add so much ridiculous fluff and unnecessary stuff to them. This isn't like you have to go get a massage every week and get your nails done. That's not what I'm talking about. And I think the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater on this one because people take it to an extreme or define it in ways that are not reality. And so then we're like, well, that just whatever. And then we let the whole thing go. And we don't want to do that. We want to take care of ourselves. You need to take care of yourself. Again, I will remind you that to me, the ultimate reason that I continue to care for myself, one of the like ultimate reasons is that I never want my children to look back and say, my mom was miserable. Does she resent us? She sacrificed it. Like, you don't want your children to believe that you raising them, homeschooling them was such an impediment to your own self that you resent them. And you may start to feel that way if you don't care for yourself. So that's important. Which kind of goes into number 8, which is to be kind to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Not just take care of yourself, but be kind to yourself. Don't talk about yourself. Don't treat yourself in a way that you wouldn't a friend. You know, extend to yourself that same gentleness and kindness that you would extend to someone else. That doesn't mean that you don't have high expectations of yourself. It doesn't mean that you don't push yourself. It doesn't mean that you don't set goals and work towards them. It just means that you are kind to yourself. You are willing to give yourself a break when it's needed, and to say, all right, listen, I know you tried your best, that didn't work. Or I know you had the best of intentions with this, but then life happened. And instead of like beating your, I'm the worst mom, I'm the worst wife, what's done is done. Let's move forward, move on. We end up staying in that place because we can't forgive ourselves or get over certain things. And so we just get into this cycle instead of just saying, what's done is done. That didn't work out how I wanted it to. I didn't, whatever. I'm going to do better next time and move on, because there's no changing that, right? So we must be kind to ourselves. We must be gentle with ourselves, that same level that we would give to another that we cared about. Number 9 is to remember that nobody is perfect, to do your very best and let it go, right? To do the best that you can with the information that you have at the time, with the knowledge that you have at the time, and let it go. Right? There will be times I look back at some of the things that I used to do within my homeschool or home, and I'm like, oh, I like have so much guilt over those things. I'm like, oh, that was so harsh, or that, you know, I lowered my expectations so much that honestly, I feel like that was unfair. I didn't call that child to more, and I should have, because they were capable. And we can just beat ourselves up over all of those things, but we have to understand that all that we can do is the best that we can do at the time, in the moment, with the information that we have. That's it. You have to just say, I'm doing my best and I'm going to let go. Doing my best, let go of the rest. I don't know. You know, we love to get Susie Rhymey in here. You are doing your best and you do need to let go of the rest. Say to yourself, I'm doing the best that I can with the information and the knowledge that I have right now. If something comes along and changes that, I'll change then, but I'm going to do my best and just wash my hands and carry on with the day. And lastly, because I don't want this video to get so insanely long, is to really remember the vision, the mission that you had for your homeschool, the true like heart of that. Go back and read that. If you've never done that before, I do have a free like download for you to walk you through the steps of exactly how to do that. So you can find that down below in the description box. If you've never done it, you must, because this is it. Like, this is the thing that you're going to come back to remind yourself why you're doing this. Pull this out, sit down, read it, reread it, and just sort of, ruminate on it, okay? Remind yourself of why you chose this, why you want to do this, and let that emotion that you created that with, that inspiration, that heart and love for your family, let that be the thing that leads you through the rest of the days, that takes you through the hard times, the great times. Let that be the thread that binds all of your days as a homeschooling mom.